Alright, hey guys, welcome to my kitchen. Earlier today we went down in the shop and we forged out a hardy tool, a cutoff tool for the anvil. Came out real nice. I had some time dilly-dallying around here tonight, and I thought we'd make some micarta. I make thin black micarta for my scale liners. So, and I've made some micarta handles, scales and things. So, I just thought we'd throw some micarta together. For those of you who maybe don't know how to make micarta, if you don't know what micarta is, it's simply fiberglass resin soaked into some type of fabric and pressed until it cures, and boom, you have scale liners or scales. Or I've seen some videos and that online where guys make pen stock, for making ink pens, and there's a multitude of applications for micarta. Pistol grips, lots of different things. What we're going to do with it is make scale liners. So let's get started here. So I apologize for the terrible light. I had to bring up this light from downstairs that I use oftentimes down there on the grinder, because just for whatever reason, my regular kitchen lights, the whole room looks orange on this camera. So what you'll need to make some micarta, sometimes I use this press. I designed this little press. It's just a simple little wooden box. You will line this with some parchment paper. After you've soaked your material in fiberglass resin, you'll lay it in here. Then fold your parchment paper back over. Put that back on there like such. And then you would use your clamps to clamp that down and press that micarta nice and tightly together. But tonight we're just making very thin micarta out of dish towel. I find this stuff to work really well. It's just a hand towel. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to press it right on this board. So we'll lay out our parchment paper on this. This is just a cheap flexible cutting board. We'll lay some parchment paper out on that. This will be what serves as our fabric in our resin. So we'll cut some pieces of this, and we'll use this. We'll put parchment paper back over the top of it and use that as our press. And by tomorrow morning we will have some very nice, sturdy, thin micarta to use for knife scales, for scale liners. So what I want to do is I want to get a general idea. You can't use the very edges of the towel because that's where the stitching is, and this tends to be a lot stiffer than the main body of the towel. So we don't want to use the very edges of our towel. So I'm just going to kind of lay that on there because that's the size of our press. And I'm going to see if my Damascus knife I made here is sharp enough to cut this to shape, and it seems to be. And, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. Once this micarta is set up, we're going to trim it up on the bandsaw anyway. So we're not really that concerned about perfection. It's nice to get as close as you can, just so you're not, you know, wasting any more of your material than you have to. But so there's us one piece. That in and of itself would make a really thin piece of micarta, but we want our micarta to be thicker than that. I like my micarta to be, for a scale liner, I like it to be around a 1/16 of an inch thick, right in that area. So we'll just repeat that process, and I think 2 pieces of this will do just fine. By the time it's pressed, it'll be between a 1/16 and 3/64 thick, somewhere in there, which is perfect. We don't want it real heavy, real thick. It's just going to accent that division between the shiny spine of the knife and where the wood handle scales begin. So we just want it to be a thin line, and you'll get to see this in use here directly, because I'm going to make a knife for my army buddy Bob up in Washington. Purchased one knife from me already, and apparently he was quite pleased with it, because he just ordered another one. He ordered the other one like almost immediately after the first one arrived. So I'm kind of happy about that. It means that he was pleased with the product that I delivered to him, which is what a person who makes knives or any type of whatever it is you make, that's what you want to hear, that your customer was pleased. So we're happy to make him another one. Would have already made the knife, but I've had other irons in the fire, so to speak, to use an old blacksmith coin term. That's where the term "too many irons in the fire" came from, was from blacksmithing. Means you've been busy. So here we go. There is our 2 pieces of material that we'll get soaked with resin, and now you don't want to mix your resin up right away, because that stuff will start to harden up pretty quickly, much like your epoxy will. So you want to be ready for it before you mix it up. So we'll get our piece of parchment paper here, and we'll get it laid down. On top of our little board. Wouldn't really need to use the board, but just in case somehow some of that goop leaks out, I'd rather have the board down than have it get all over my countertop. And then here's a piece that we will use to cover this once we're ready. So now we're ready to mix up our resin. And I'm probably going to use the last of this. I've got another can of this downstairs, but I need to use the rest of this up. Now this stuff smells a little bit like model glue. So you want to make sure that you have some decent ventilation when you're working with it. I mean, it's not horrible. You're not, you're not going to end up in the hospital unless you maybe you're allergic to this stuff or something. Now this isn't by itself, without the hardener. You can leave this sit in this cup for quite a long period of time, and I just want to make sure this can drains out, so I don't want to get in a big hurry. You could leave that in there indefinitely if you can stand the smell, and it's not going to bother a thing, and it won't harden up. You have to put the hardener in it, which is what we have right here. This little tube of hardener works for this entire can. You just, there's a whole formula to how much you put into your material, into your resin. The math gets way out there for me. So I just, depending on the amount of resin I use, there's a scale. And I believe that they explain it on the can somewhere. There's an explanation of how to mix your hardener with your resin. So many drops of resin, of hardener to so many drops or ounces of resin, yada yada. I've always found I just put my resin in here, squirt in a little hardener, just, kind of like making up my own recipe when I'm making dinner. And I've never had a problem. It always comes out well. Bottom line is, you don't need that whole bottle of hardener, that whole tube of hardener in a small amount of resin. But this is the last of our resin. This can is empty. So now, before I get the hardener in there, I'm going to put on my rubber gloves. Now, a lot of guys will take their fabric and lay it out like this and sit there and paint this stuff on with a paintbrush, then turn it over, paint the other side, then take this and paint it. I just take them and dunk them right in there, soak them with resin, and lay them out and press them, So it's just a little less meticulous. It's a little faster for me. So now you're going to need something to stir your resin. I just have a small piece of wood that I split off of a paint stir stick. No use in wasting the whole stick. I just peel off a little piece like that whenever I need to mix up some micarta, and it seems to work quite well. Fiberglass resin, I mean, not micarta. So I don't believe we need all of this hardener. I probably went a little light on some of my other projects. So now you want to stir that up and make sure you get it stirred in there really well. Because this resin will not harden without the hardener in it. So you want to make sure that's stirred up real well. And also have a little acetone on hand in case you get some on your countertop or on your fingers or wherever. The acetone will clean it right up. So I think I'm going to put just a little more of this hardener in there, seeing as how we have it. I think I'd kind of rather have too much than not enough, but I've used that hardener with this stuff, and I mean, it doesn't seem to take a whole lot. It just activates it, and it'll, you know, it'll harden up fairly quickly. So not too worried about it. I need to grab a paper towel. And we'll get our stick out of here. That's stirred up quite well, I believe. You just need to make sure that that hardener is well mixed in. You know, if you just kind of gave it a little stir, it would, there's a good chance that you would have spots in there that wouldn't have enough hardener in it. Now see, I'm just going to take this and stick it right in this cup and just get it good and soaked. You can see it doesn't need to be, you know, you want it through all your fabric, but you don't need that whole cup, that whole mixture on there. Well, let's bring this over here so we don't drip on the counter. Well, see, that is very well saturated. That has plenty of our fiberglass resin in it. And we'll just lay that one out there like that. We'll grab this one here and we'll do the same, give it the same treatment. And we've got way too much resin here. I just get it in there and then I wring it out, sort of like you would just your, you know, dishcloth or a washcloth that you were using in the sink or something. Now we'll lay that one out on top of this. And there we have our micarta. Now I need to get these gloves off. And that stuff is really slickery. I guess I'll just grab it up here. If I get a little of that stuff on my skin, the acetone will take it right off. So, not too worried about that. But we don't want to get this stuff everywhere, so get those off, because we finished with that part of our procedure. Move that over there. I've got a little bit of resin on my counter right there. Not a huge problem. We'll just take a little acetone here. Got some on my finger too here some way. Get that off. Just like so. And there's that. All gone. Okay, so get that little, we'll just lay that little stick right there. We'll get our other piece of parchment paper over here, and we'll just set our press down right on top of that. That's a good heavy press. It's a good flat surface. And And when we come back and check this out later, we'll have some really thin, really strong scale liners to use with our knife handles. You see what I mean? Right in here where the spine of the knife is, these scale liners will cut the same shape as this, and they'll go inside, so you'll have this black line runs right along here, completely around your handle scales. Looks very nice. It'll set that knife off really nicely, and you know, don't you just love my Damascus job here? 144 layer. I believe I showed this to you in one of my previous videos, but that little knife came out quite nicely. You know, tried and failed a couple of previous Damascus attempts. Nailed it on this one. So, like I say to all the new blacksmiths out there, if you're just starting out and you're struggling and you know, you don't have to be perfect right off of the bat. No one is. Lord knows I'm not. But just get out in the shop and beat on something and have some fun. You know, that's the way I look at it. And it's like this here. I mean, this is, I even enjoy making this smelly stuff. So, alright, we'll come back to this when this has had a chance to cure and firm up, and we'll take a look at it then. So guys, it's been a few hours since we made our little micarta press here. Let's see what we've got. Notice how nicely that parchment paper peels off. In fact, these little beads of stuff there are sticking to that. Well, there we have it. This stuff still needs to set up a little more. Should be good and hard by morning. See, that's what we'll take when I make a knife. Take my, take and cut out a piece relatively close to my size of my handle scales. And I don't know, this came out a little bit thicker than I really want, but maybe I could have only used one layer on that towel, but anyway, we're going to go ahead and cover this up and leave it here for the rest of the night. And in the morning, we'll come and check that out and put that away. I just thought it'd be a nice quick little video to show you how I make my micarta scale liners. Alright guys, I appreciate you watching. I hope you got a little something out of this maybe. If you like the things I do, hit that subscribe button, and that'll help me out, and it'll help you out because you'll get to see, you'll be notified when the next project comes up. So got some more stuff going on in the shop tomorrow. Be sure and tune in again. And again, I sure appreciate you watching, and I hope everyone has a great night. Thanks again, guys.